Very good. But we are here to investigate a mystery in that church behind me. Now, this may look like any other English church. There are thousands like this, aren't there, in this country? But just inside that window there is something which makes this one extraordinary, because it hints at an antiquity of Christianity on this site, going back a long time before the 13th century fabric of this church implies. There's a real air that kills blowing through this autumnal churchyard here today in Great Urswick. This is the church of St Mary and St Michael. Bit greedy. Discoveries made here over 100 years ago, over which debates still rumble. We've even got a whiff of 21st century scandal for you. But regardless, the existence of a deeply Christian community here makes the second half of this video all the more surprising. Because up until the early 1800s, in a field opposite this church called Kirk Flat, Wicker Man style ancient fertility rites were performed by cavorting ladies dancing around 7-foot tall stone phallus opposite the Christian church. A couple of points for pedants in the corner. The village name is something like Great Urswick in the local dialect, and whilst all churches were originally Christian, they're not now. See Scientology. And clearly this, opposite the Christian church, was said for dramatic effect. See art of documentary making. It all started in 1909 when a small chunk of inscribed stone was discovered. And over here we've got Collingwood's picture of it, showing how it was once part of an Anglo-Saxon cross. And there it actually is, just under the font there. Very faint now. The red sandstone is sort of crumbling away. Third take, I've just filmed it all in slow motion. So reading at Barrow Inn, Furness in 1909, Collingwood advised that in his view, this was Anglo-Scandinavian in style. And he went so far as to say it was the first ever example of Anglo-Saxon stonework, a relic from the Anglo-Saxon period, found anywhere on the Furness Peninsula. Ugh. Now, he subscribed that it was part of a wheel-head cross, as illustrated in his picture, which hangs in the church to this day. A few years later, things took another exciting turn, and Collingwood found himself being summoned back to the church by Postlethwaite, the then Reverend here. Some of the names in this are going to sound like they're characters from an M.R. James ghost story for Christmas, which I'm not entirely sure is a good idea when I'm here alone in this church on a spooky autumnal day. Anyhow, Postlethwaite informed Collingwood that his builder, Mr. Affleck, had discovered another inscribed stone, this time acting as a lintel above a window. Collingwood was very excited. He didn't delay in setting off and coming to have a look at it, along with his son. And here it is. This is where it lives today, in this window. And this was actually recommended to us by our very own Phil Barrett, who normally does the LiDAR. So thanks, Phil. I'm really pleased that you did. What a marvellous thing it is. Back in 1911, Collingwood and his son wasted no time in removing it from its function as a window lintel, presumably providing some sort of reassurance to Affleck and Postlethwaite. They took it home, cleaned it up, and Collingwood decided that this was purely Anglian in style, i.e. no Scandinavian. Okay, before we get into the long and complicated series of arguments about the origin, the age of this thing, which is actually really fascinating, don't be put off by that. And also, don't forget, we've got a 7-foot stone phallus coming up later on. I'll just read to you, you've seen the runes on the side of this. I'll read Collingwood's translation of the same to you. So, the cross of Tunwini, erected in memory of Tortred, a monument to his lord, prayer for his soul. So, Tunwini, Collingwood believed, was a person's name. And a Tunwini was subscribed at Hexham around about the time that Collingwood was looking at this. Here's Collingwood's usual excellent recreation of the cross, reassembled. And he came down on a date of 850 to 870 AD, so literally just before the Vikings arrived, invaded in his non-PC worldview of the early 20th century, which is probably also mine. You know, it's interesting to me that Collingwood is sort of not sure about who these figures depict. Is this the baptism of Christ? Is it John the Baptist? Who is it? But what do you think about these? They're amazing, aren't they? It's very interesting about the sort of cowl here. And then are these collars? They got collars on. But they also, I think they're both men. I don't think there's a Mary in there, is there? I mean, maybe there's some Pictish in there, but there's also something slightly sort of, it's ridiculous, isn't there? But there's something almost slightly sort of African about it. And then what about these on the other side? So Collingwood thought they might be Adam and Eve. He described them as an infantile attempt at Adam and Eve, semi-nude. Now, cavorting pagans outside would probably like those. Semi-nude pagans. They like that sort of thing, don't they? Later in the 20th century, Kendrick, favoured by Pevsner, dated it as 11th century, so over 100 years later and well into the Norse period. He saw the baptism of Christ. Well, it certainly is interesting, isn't it? I'm not too sure about the Scandinavian thing, but I definitely can see Celtic. You'll have to scribe down below what you think you can see. Roll forward to the space-age 21st century. .com bubble and the advent of Davina McCall aside, there was a mood of positivity in the air, and this extended to archaeological projects. Steve Dickinson introduces an archaeological and discovery coordination project to understand the origins of Urswick. He believed the church sat in a large Roman fort, as evidenced by tooled imported stone in both church fabric and local field walls. He dated the cross shaft to 690 to 700 AD. He thought it had been resubscribed, recarved in effect, with new work crossing older borders. The named individuals were a Columban prior from Iona and Theodore, the 7th Archbishop of Canterbury, who died in 690. The prior found sanctuary at a place called Sinus Fari, which Dickinson said was here and not Whitby. He also had it as Bede's Candida Casa, a focal point for Western Seaways in the early development of Christianity. Oh, and it was also the birthplace of St. Patrick himself. Unfortunately, Dickinson was never able to prove his Roman fault, and it all fizzled out in unpaid bills and bankruptcy, as was the way with all early 21st century hope. And if you're wondering what the church's position on all of this now is, in the little booklet next to the cross itself, it's very much based on Collingwood, whereas over here on these panels, it now says it is possible that important parts of the inscription of the cross were recut around 690 to 700. So they're picking up on Dickinson's idea there. And they go on to say that it would provide a powerful evidence for the early Christian community here and connections to Christian saints such as St. Ninian and St. Columba. I enjoyed reading Dickinson's ideas, although they are somewhat Langdonesque in places. Now, this is not public knowledge yet, but a significant Roman hoard has been found nearby recently. Now, regardless of whether it's Collingwood, Kendrick or Dickinson for you, these cross shaft fragments do indicate an important early Christian site. Let us know what you think in the comments, and can I stress it was Dickinson who claimed St. Patrick was born here? That remains Ravenglass in my book. Unfortunately, Mr. Affleck's view was not recorded. I think the two figures aren't biblical, by the way. It's Tunwini and Tortrid. And that brings us on to the moment that I'm sure some of you have been waiting for. It's time to get lewd outside. So, do you know about the god Priapus, beloved of the ancient Greeks and the Romans? Have you heard of him? He was the one that got kicked by a donkey. Do you remember that? Got kicked by a donkey and lost his... No? He was a god of fertility in fruit, vegetables and animals. Possibly the son of Aphrodite and Dionysus? No? He's the one who used his massive phallus. He put it in the scales to weigh vegetables. Ah, you've got it now. Right, it is time for me to put up a warning. If you are of a nervous disposition when it comes to phalli, please look away now, because I'm going to display some classical representations of Priapus, and you will look at those and you will ask yourself, what is he doing in this tiny village in Lancashire, north of the sands? Over the sands. Would you subscribe to this? It is claimed that up until the early 19th century, villagers here held fertility rites in this field opposite the church called Kirk Flat to this enormously endowed god. William Fleming's diary of 1801 was republished in the late 1950s, and a committee promptly appointed, as I say it's the 1950s, to investigate the incredible revelation that a potentially prehistoric megalith once stood in the Kirk Flat field, to be annually smeared with sheep saliva, butter, dyed rags and crowned with flowers. And this is AI attempting to visualise that. Look, there's the butter. But by the 1950s, the stone was no longer in the field and there was no memory of the pagan fertility ritual in the village, at least that anybody would admit to. The megalith was not the only thing to have gone missing from Kirk Flat. Looking at the earliest Ordnance Survey maps, we see a tarn. I think you can just about see the shadow of that in the field today. There's the Church of St Mary and St Michael, there's the Kirk Flat field. And then here, embedded in the wall, is what the committee, searching in 1957, found and claimed to be the Priapus Stone. And according to an octogenarian farmer called Mr. Stable, he claimed it had been moved out of the field into this wall in 1927. Stable advised that it had been an animal rub in that field and it was moved out to safeguard it. I'm wondering about nervous vicars at this point, to be honest. The investigation team recorded the Priapus Stone as being 7 foot long, 1¼ ton in weight, 12 inches thick, which I struggled to verify. It seemed thin to me, and it is certainly not visible on the other side in the field. Incidentally, whoever it was that put that glass shard in there, you are dead, mate, if ever I get hold of you. Do you think it looks phallic? I'm not convinced, to be honest. And the LiDAR and older maps hint at some quarrying in the field to me, which this could relate to. I don't even feel that confident about matching this to the photo in the 1950s report. But stone botherers love this. There are cup marks, apparently. I couldn't find them. But I did find these peculiar finger holes at one end, and I have read that ladies used to put their fingers in there in order to become fertile. Apparently. If this is some ancient fertility phallus, it could date back to pagan times and lend credence to Dickinson's arguments that this was an important place during the Roman period, and if megalithic, way before that. This is a fascinating area with much to debate about its history, and you might like to check these videos out if you found this interesting. Links in description. Just having a quick break in the car. If you're an LTV, long-term viewer, you'll know that I personally don't subscribe to the belief systems behind these churches, but I don't like to take the mickey, and it feels a bit cheeky to sit in there and eat my cheese and onion sandwich. I do enjoy making these. They make a nice change, and these fragments of crosses in these tiny churches in the middle of nowhere are really fascinating because they do tell us that once upon a time this was a really important place. And also, if you're a LTV, long-term viewer, you'll remember when I started these, I had the foolish notion that I needed celebrity endorsement. But fortunately, I've long since moved away from that. Although the celebrities haven't necessarily moved away from me. You can imagine who I've heard from since the last one of these I made. Master Chef. Oh, darling, you know you asked me what I wanted for Christmas? I'll tell you what I want. I want 20,000 subscribers. I've had to duck back into the church. And it's interesting, in this lovely little sort of kitchen area that they supply, churches are great nowadays, aren't they? Tea-making facilities, the lot. There's this really good display about the history of Urswick, and it's very thorough. They've even got Langdale axes on there. And yet, as far as I can see, there's absolutely no mention whatsoever of the Priapus Stone that I've had such difficulty filming for you in the rain today. So it does make you wonder if the event in the 1920s was a vicar incumbent in this church at that time, not liking the idea of there being a 7-foot stone phallus that young ladies used to dance around and smear with butter and sheep's saliva in the field named after the church, opposite the church. And maybe it was less a regard for the preservation of a prehistoric megalith that led to it being put in the wall, and more the disdain of a vicar. And did another odd little twist, given the fertility aspect. Whilst I've been filming here in this kitchen area of the church, a young mum came in with her baby. She thought I was the vicar and she wanted to book it in for a christening. Obviously, I wasn't able to help. I tried to tell her a little bit about the cross shaft, but unfortunately, she had to dash. She had other things to attend to. Incidentally, another inscribed stone was found here in the early 2000s, but unfortunately it was resealed in the floor beneath the new central heating before anybody could have a proper look at it. I hope you enjoyed that as much as me, and I'm enjoying having this sort of professional backdrop. I had a pointer the other week, now I've got a professional backdrop. Thank you very much for what... Oh, excuse me 1 second. Hello? The YouTube Creative Hub, whatever that is. Yeah. I've been trying to subliminally make people subscribe. Oh, hang on a second, Creative Hub. I've got another call coming in. I'm going to have to put you on hold, I'm afraid. I've got John Terode on the other line. Hello, John. I'm sure you do love Anglo-Saxon crosses, John, but it's non-celebrity Anglo-Saxon crosses all the way now with this series. Yep. Lawyers. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Anyhow, John, I've got YouTube Creative Hub on the other line. This is going to take a while. See you next week. Right, so, messaging. Subliminal messaging. What? The lawyers? Yeah, I know who I'm speaking to. Oh, you will you? Yeah.